Hi everyone. So happy to be here. My name is Haley Pierce, and I am a market engagement lead at LinkedIn's marketing think tank, the B2B Institute. Like I said, I'm so excited to be here at Vimeo's Outside the Frame event, but I'm even more excited that I get to use the next 30 minutes empowering all of you to break B2B marketing rules. So this might not be your typical session at a marketing conference, but I promise you that Vimeo signed off on this topic. So I'll use our time today walking through 4 ideas that vary from typical B2B marketing conventions and attempt to prove to all of you that adopting these contrarian ideas is actually the strategic choice to outperform your competition. So quick housekeeping note, as I go through, feel free to add your questions to the chat, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for me to cover some of those. Okay, so you might be thinking, why is she qualified to encourage B2B marketers to break the rules? And my answer to that question is that I'm paid to do so. But in all seriousness, my team at LinkedIn actually does this professionally. So for those who aren't familiar with us, the B2B Institute is a marketing think tank that researches new approaches to B2B growth. And we find these new approaches by partnering with some of the most brilliant minds in the space. So from industry experts to thought leaders to academic institutions like the Aaron Bird Bass Institute. We work with them to research marketing and decision-making. And then what we do is we invest in the ideas that are future is that we get to share these ideas with LinkedIn customers and other wonderful people more broadly, like you all today. So at the B2B Institute, we are obsessed with this decision-making framework called the contrarian matrix. In fact, we measure all of our ideas using it so we can determine just how great the idea really is. So the contrarian matrix is a decision-making framework invented by investors to identify the assets that will deliver above average gains. So let me quickly explain. In any decision that you make in life, you can either be right or you can be wrong. So for example, when you decide to choose the side salad instead of the fries, that's wrong. But every decision can also be contrarian or consensus. So you can do what everyone is doing, or you can do what no one is doing. But if you make the wrong decision, it doesn't really matter whether you're with or against the crowd. But if you make the right decision, the decision that no one else is making, that's really where the magic happens. And this is because you're the one that captures all of the upside. So what I'm going to share with you today are 4 ideas that pass the test. There are a few of our most famous contrarian ideas for the B2B marketer. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I really hope that I can convince all of you to become contrarians like us at the B2B Institute and defy the norms of B2B marketing and really adopt these in your marketing strategy. So let's get started. So to kick us off with our first contrarian idea, I'd love to bring Ty Heath to the stage to introduce the 95-5 rule. So you can go ahead and cue the video.
Aston Martin doesn't run ads anymore. So how is it that people keep referencing an ad from 50 years ago when purchasing a car today? It's because ads work over the long term. 95% of category buyers are out market at any given time. Buyers are either in market or out market. Most buyers are future buyers, and future buyers are the source of future cash flows. Shake up your buyer journey, not stirred, and find out what this means for your brand marketing strategy.
All right, I hope you liked the video. I worked very hard on it. So as you heard, Tide shared the story about Aston Martin, which illustrates that advertising has the power to work over the long term. And brand advertising in particular works over very long periods of time. In Aston Martin's case, this was over 50 plus years. So one of our key phrases at the B2B Institute is the best ads don't wear out, they actually wear in. And what this means is really that they stay with us over long periods of time, building memories that have the power to influence us years later. And ads need to work over long periods of time because most people aren't ready to buy today. This segment is called future buyers. It's what we call outmarket, as Ty briefly mentioned. So this outmarket segment won't be ready to purchase today, but they will be in market to buy at some point in the future. So if you take a look at the data on this slide, you can see that many purchase decisions, specifically in B2B, happen infrequently. So for example, 75% of companies buy computers only once every 4 years. 80% of companies change banking services once every 5 years. And even in B2C, 90% of consumers buy new cars every 10 years. So not a huge amount of time, or excuse me, a huge amount of time. They're not buying cars very often, rather. So the key insight is that advertising is mostly reaching people who aren't ready to buy today. And this might sound intuitive when I break it down this way, but the reality is that B2B marketers tend to be hyper-focused on performance marketing or lead gen. Marketers they're sort of like fixated on capturing demand versus creating demand. And the shift that I really encourage all of you to make is think about how you can drive the most business value. So most companies are valued based on future cash flows, not current cash flows. And future cash flows come from future buyers. And brand advertising, like I mentioned, is really how you prime these future buyers. So to illustrate this concept, we took a traditional marketing funnel and we flipped it on its side. And what we call this is the cash flow funnel. And the cash flow funnel is really just a better way to visualize the opportunity that marketers have with future buyers. So what you can see on the right is only 5% of potential buyers are in market and ready to buy today, representing a much, much smaller revenue figure than what would be from the 95% on the left hand of future buyers who will buy at some point in the future. So you can use this cash funnel to really articulate to your stakeholders, whether that be in sales or finance, why better balancing your budget between demand creation and demand capture is so important. So key takeaway for the 95-5 rule is to grow your brand, you need to advertise to people who aren't in the market now, so that when they do enter the market, your brand is the one that they're familiar with. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next one. So now that you really understand why investing in brand advertising is really so critical for B2B marketers, the next concept I want to walk through will explain how to actually increase the likelihood that your brand comes to mind when someone enters the market and is ready to buy. This is a concept that we call situational awareness. So like I said in the 95-5 rule, brand advertising has the power to influence over very long periods of time. And the reason for that is really because people remember great ads. I mean, I'm sure every single one of us on this call can quickly recall our favorite ad from the past 5 years. And people remember great ads, but the interesting nuance here is that memories rarely exist independent of situations, because memories are inherently situational. Most conscious memory recall happens as a result of some type of situational trigger. So because we're nerds at the B2B Institute, we love looking at what studies have been done, and there's some really fascinating ones that look at the relationship between situation and recall. And one such a repeated experiment that we found particularly interesting showed that if we learn vocabulary underwater, our recall of what we learned is actually stronger when we're underwater again. So brand memories are the same. We tend to remember some brands over others depending on the situation that we find ourselves in when we're in the market to purchase. So I think a really good way to illustrate it is through some type of thought exercise. So I want each of you to think about what ice cream brand comes to mind on a hot summer's day. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Now you want to think about an ice cream brand that comes to mind as a dessert over Christmas. And now I want you to think about an ice cream brand that you ate after your first breakup. Just kidding. Let's definitely not go there. But the thing is, you likely thought of a different brand in every scenario. I certainly did. And there have been several studies that have proven this phenomenon, which essentially tells us that situation is a powerful determinant of the brands that we remember. And really the implication of these studies are that we need to do a better job at measuring situations. In fact, the contrarian component of this idea is really that no B2B marketers are measuring situation today. So I want you to think about measuring situational awareness as really the peak of an iceberg, or a pyramid as shown on the screen because PowerPoint did not have a great iceberg visualization. But what you need to do is increase your share of mind is really how you move from brand awareness to top of mind awareness to situational awareness. So to give you just a more tactical way to think about, how to actually measure these things, I'll share just like a few potential survey questions for, let's just say, like the coffee industry, something that we can all quickly and easily understand. So to gauge brand awareness, likely a marketer would say, or ask in a survey, how many coffee brands can you name? To gauge which brand is most top of mind or most salient, you would likely ask, you sort of prime them with the coffee industry and say, when thinking of the coffee category, which brand comes to mind first? So in this example, what's likely to come to mind is Starbucks because they're the largest player in the category. But really the real question marketers need to start asking is which coffee brand comes to mind when you're on your way to work or on the weekends or when you're catching up with a friend. And the reason is that these different situations, or the more academic formal term is called category entry points, they're likely to influence the brand that most readily comes to mind. So in the example I gave, Starbucks may be top of mind, but I may more readily think of Nespresso or a local coffee shop on the weekends, or I might think of La Colombe when meeting a friend. So you can really see by just like going through the exercise yourself that situation not only influences recall, but it's really the fundamental reality of every buyer experience. So our job as a marketer is to link your brand to as many relevant buying situations as possible. So how can you do this? You need to think, like I said, in terms of situation. It's not about what buyers think of your brand. It's really about when they think of your brand. And you can start to understand your situational cues by using something that we call the W's approach. So the W's, as you can see on your screen, are a series of questions that help you identify sort of the core buying situations in your category. And they also help you understand what are the unique triggers that buyers experience that put them in a particular buying situation. And it's really, really important to understand these category-specific buying situations because it allows you to develop creative that links your brand to them in a much more customer-centric way. So let me give you a quick example in B2B. Salesforce understands that there's no awareness independent of situations. That's why situational messaging is so critical. So their Trailblazer campaign, which you can see on your screen, brought together 3 key buying situations that they wanted to own. So the buying situations were bringing customers and companies together, bringing governments and citizens together, and manufacturers and customers together. And what they did was they created really simple, clear messaging that's distinct, it's well branded, it's visually interesting, And they did just that. So I think the one other thing to call out here is that messaging that's easy to understand is really critical, because outmarket buyers won't respond well to super technical messaging. If you think about it, like if I'm not even ready to buy today, talking about the product features alone is not going to capture my attention. So I'm going to get into more detail about this in the next idea, but you have to consistently draw on the 95-5 rule, and you need your messaging to connect with your out-market buyers in order to grow. And simple messaging is really how you do just that. The other interesting thing here in terms of like simplicity in messaging is market messaging to out-market buyers works for in-market buyers, but the reverse is not true. So super important for you to keep in mind. So wrapping it all together for situational awareness, the key takeaway is that because situation heavily influences memory recall, you need to link your brand to your key buying situations to be remembered. You need to focus on building situational awareness to increase your share of mind. All right. So now we're moving on to the product illusion. I will say the product illusion is probably one of my favorites and perhaps the most interesting idea that we have at the B2B Institute. B2B marketers are notorious for falling for the product illusion, but let me hand it over to the founder of the B2B Institute, the one and only Jan Swartz, to explain more.
What if your favorite soda brand advertised itself as sweet, brown, and fizzy? Of course, soda brands don't market this way because they understand the power of brand. They don't obsess over product specs. Instead, they try to be the biggest brand in their category. B2B companies, on the other hand, delude themselves into thinking that buyers always look for the best product in the world. We call that the product delusion. But the reality is that buyers don't waste time searching for the best product in the world. They don't maximize, they satisfy. And because B2B buyers are risk averse, they usually go for the brand they trust, the brand they already know. Find out why the product delusion is holding us back in B2B.
Okay, so as Jan explained, we see that in B2B, everyone falls for the product delusion. The consensus idea is really that companies compete exclusively on product superiority, and to boost sales, all you need is a better product or you need more products. Everything is centered around the product. I think, us marketers can feel that. I think sometimes marketing is seen as an afterthought. So Jeff Bezos, I'm sure you've heard of him, is famous for once voicing this school of thought. And what he said was, advertising is the price you pay for having an unremarkable product or service. We, of course, reject this idea, and Jeff Bezos eventually ate his words as well, because Amazon is one of the largest advertisers in the entire world. So you just heard Jan explain the idea that if B2C companies marketed like B2B companies, you'd see ads that highlight stats like 95% of thirsty people agree that Coca-Cola solves their thirst problem, or 89% of Coca-Cola multi-buys are discounted. And of course, even saying it out loud sounds silly because we all know that Coca-Cola doesn't market this way. They understand that distinct assets like colors and characters and, emotional storytelling, that's what helps brands be remembered. In B2B marketing, however, most ads that we see are attribute-based. They're focused solely on boosting the solution's success. But us B2B marketers should really know better. So let me try to convince you for the next minute why you should reject the product illusion and not fall for this dominant school of thought like your B2B marketing peers. So we believe that the best product actually isn't the one with the most sophisticated attributes, but the best product is really the product that you already know. And the reason is that people don't enter a buying situation and start doing extensive research to find the absolute best product on the market. Really, because pursuing the perfect product just takes way too much time and effort. Almost every time, people buy based on familiarity and they're satisfying with the option that suffices. So this is a term called satisficing. So again, this is why brand marketing is so important, because in most cases, the brand that's most easily remembered is a brand that's bought. And great brand advertising is what builds these situational memories. So there's some great evidence on this from one of our wonderful research partners, the Aaron Burr Bass Institute. So the research studied how people made decisions about high consideration purchases like business banking, where there's a plethora of banks and there's tons of different options. So super interestingly, they found that almost half, 47% to be exact, of buyers went straight to their current bank. So they didn't look at any other options. They went to the bank that they already knew. Among the other half who claimed to do this shopping around, they only ended up considering about 1 to 2 banks, and 75% of them still chose their current bank. So the average number of banks, as you can see on the screen, that were even considered for a new financial service was less than 2 at 1.7. So 2 key takeaways I want you all to remember for the product illusion. Focus on building distinct and memorable creative through storytelling, branding, colors, character, like our friends in B2C. And then number 2, an idea that you'll probably hear me say for the 10th time, investing in brand marketing is so critical. And investing in brand marketing will drive sales because people buy based more on familiarity than product features. Okay, so we're getting to our last contrarian idea. We only have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to try to run through it very quickly. So this is an idea that it's going to help you rethink your distribution strategy, and it's an idea that we call reach maximalism. So there's this age-old trade-off between reach and frequency. We're often asked by our customers, what matters more and why? So we set out to explore, and we specifically explored this question, so I'll pose it to all of you now. Is it more profitable to reach 1 million people once or 500,000 people twice? So I'll give you a second. The answer is that you need to reach 1 million people once. And we found that it's much more profitable because frequency becomes incrementally less effective as it gets higher. The chart sort of revealed the answer, but you get the point. But what really you can see from this chart is that the first impression is the most valuable. It's the steepest on the graph. And then every subsequent exposure, aka frequency, has a much less significant impact. So what's going to result in more impact is if you reach new people once versus the same people twice or 3 times. So this exposure study has since been replicated a handful of times. The most recent study by Nielsen analyzed 3 different frequency strategies, low, medium, and heavy, and they calculated the sales responses for each strategy. And their goal was to determine the number of impressions required to drive a 1% increase in sales across the 3 different segments. So just so you have a sense of the sample, 41% were low frequency, which means that they'd been exposed to an ad 1 to 2 times. 25% of the sample were medium frequency, which means they'd been exposed to an ad 3 to 6 times. And then 33% were heavy frequency, which means they'd been exposed to an ad 7+ times. And the results of this study proved again why reach is the strategic and most cost-effective choice. So they found that for the low frequency segment, it took an average of 1.9 ad impressions to produce each point of sales growth. For medium frequency segment, it took 4.7 impressions. And then for high frequency segment, it took an average of 7.3 impressions to produce a point of sales growth. The other thing to note here is the medium frequency strategy cost almost 3 times as much as the low frequency strategy. And the high frequency strategy cost almost 4 times as much as the low frequency strategy. So if you didn't listen to any of those numbers I just rumbled off, really what you need to remember is that a strategy that prioritizes unique reach over frequency presents a much lower hurdle to achieve that same level of sales lift. Oops, skipped one slide. Okay, so reach is not only the lowest hurdle, but it's also the first. So without reach, nothing else really matters when you think about it in this sequential way. So without an ad impression, there's no way to capture attention. There's no way that you can build a memory structure, and there's certainly no way that you can influence a purchase. So B2B marketers should really shift their thinking and consider their primary media objective to be reaching as many new category buyers as possible. And really, you should think about reach in 2 different ways: category reach and unique reach. So it wouldn't be right for me to go through this entire presentation without mentioning LinkedIn ads. So quickly bear with me as I go through this shameless plug. So LinkedIn is super powerful for B2B marketers because it allows you to achieve both category and unique reach. Using our targeting features, you can target the full category, which is super important because you can reach both in-market and out-market buyers, buyers across all functions of the buyer committee, and also reach buyers across all levels of seniority. Because your brand building efforts should really reach the junior employees that will be the future decision makers. So this concludes my shameless plug. The takeaway here is to adopt a reach maximalist approach to your media strategy and focus on reaching as many category buyers as possible. So I'm actually being told that I am at time, so I will skip this takeaway slide. Hopefully you all were paying attention, and I was able to convince you to break B2B conventions for better results. And if you're interested and you liked what you saw, please follow the B2B Institute on LinkedIn, and please connect with me. Thank you so much for the time today. Really, really enjoyed it.